Rain tapped gently against the windows of Café Ether, a small, sleepy corner in the heart of Prague. The air was warm with the scent of cinnamon and espresso. She sat alone by the window. Arya-san, 26, Indian origin, a literature researcher doing her PhD on reincarnation and forgotten cultures. Her eyes were always reading something, but her soul was always listening for something else. That day, she wasn't reading. She was staring at a photograph. Black and white. Torn edges. Maybe 80 years old. But it was her face. Exactly her face. Same eyes, same mole under the left eye, same curve in the lips. But that woman in the photo was wearing a soldier's jacket from World War II, standing beside a man, eyes stormy, posture like poetry in pain. And behind them, half-burnt ruins of a house, with the number 84A still hanging above the door. Arya had found this photo in a second-hand bookstore, inside an old German diary titled, "For sie, für immer, for her forever." She hadn't slept properly in 3 nights. Cut to R. Reiner, 28. Half German, half Indian. War journalist turned photo restorer. Loner, scar on his right temple. He received a call that morning from an unknown number. Just a whisper said, "Find 84A. She's already dreaming." He didn't know what it meant until he walked into Café Ether, chasing a trail that began with that same photograph. The one he had seen years ago in a dream, where he was dying beside a woman with Arya's face, whispering, "Not this lifetime. Maybe the next." Their eyes met, and something broke inside both of them. Neither said a word, but something ancient recognized something lost. Arya stood up, walked to him, quietly placed the photo on the table. Her fingers trembled. He didn't blink. "Where did you get this?" She shook her head softly. "You're not supposed to be real," he whispered. "Neither were you." In the silence between them, something deep and soul-shifting moved. The cafe music faded out. The rain slowed. The smell of war, old, buried, distant, drifted in. Somewhere in her spine, she felt a bullet again. Somewhere in his chest, he tasted blood and rust. This wasn't a meet-cute. This wasn't déjà vu. This was something else. Something ancient. Something dangerous. Something unfinished. You know that feeling. When your skin remembers something your brain doesn't? That's what Arya felt. When she and Arav stood before the street called Vaklavska 12, the address written behind that old photograph. It was supposed to be there. House 84A. But it wasn't. Only a cracked sidewalk. A rusted lamppost. And space. Just space. As if the house had once stood there, and then quietly vanished, like a memory too painful to keep. Arya's voice broke the silence. "It existed. I can feel it. Like I've been here. But not now. Another time." Arav didn't respond. He just looked at her. His fingers slid into his jacket pocket, pulling out a small rusted bullet casing. He'd found it years ago in a Syrian war zone. But on it was something strange, carved into the copper. AS-84A. "Forgive me." He showed it to her. She took it, stared. Her breath hitched. A.S. Her initials. Tears welled up, not from the eyes. From somewhere deeper, darker, older. She whispered, "Did I die here?" Arav closed his eyes. He didn't know. But his heart. It ached like he'd held her as she bled out in another life. Just then, a sound. Clink. Something metallic. From beneath the ground, they looked down. The edge of a rusted door, hidden under overgrowth. A basement hatch. They looked at each other. No words. Just the kind of silence that says, "If we go in, there's no going back." The hatch creaked open. A narrow stairwell led into darkness. The air was thick with dust, and the faint smell of firewood and blood. At the bottom, a table. A single chair. And a wall covered in photographs. Dozens. Same woman. Same face. Arya. Different clothes. different eras. 1930s, 1940s. One from 1912. One even older. A painting. Same eyes. Same scar. Same soul. In the center of the table was a diary. Burnt at the edges, but still intact. Its cover read, "I found her again, but she doesn't know me yet." Aria's hand shook as she opened the first page. And saw it. His handwriting. Not Ariv's, but the man in the photograph. The man beside her, 80 years ago. She looked up at Ariv. He looked back. Both breathing. But something else in them had gone still. "I think we're reading our own ending. From the middle," she said. Ariv replied, almost afraid. "And this time, we're alive to remember it." She didn't speak for a long time. Just flipped through the fragile pages of the diary, each one shaking slightly in her hands, as if the paper itself remembered what she didn't. The ink was old, but clear. Written with a soldier's precision and a poet's ache. May 17th, 1944. She appeared again. I don't know how, but it's her. The eyes never change. Aria touched the page softly, as if touching a wound. She didn't know why, but every word felt like it was written for her. Not just to her, for her. Like someone had been waiting across lifetimes, trying to make sure she remembered. She turned another page. June 3rd, 1944. She doesn't remember me. She never does. But I know. I always know. Every lifetime, I find her too late. Or she leaves too soon. I think this curse won't lift until one of us walks away willingly. But how do you walk away from your own soul? Her eyes blurred with tears. Ariv said nothing. He sat across from her, his fingers tied around his own thoughts. He didn't know what frightened him more, the words she was reading, or the strange feeling in his chest that told him. He had written them. Not now. Not in this life. But once, when bullets and promises shared the same weight. She kept reading. Page after page. Letters addressed to her, or to someone who wore her face, her smile, her sadness. The last page was torn. Only half a sentence remained. If I fail again, burn the house. Let memory die. Let her be free. And below it, a single line, written hastily. But if she returns, show her this place. Let her choose. Aria looked up. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. What am I choosing? Ariv's eyes searched hers. I don't know. But maybe that's the point. She closed the diary. Took a deep breath, then looked at the wall of photos again. One of them stood out. It was newer. Much newer. She stepped closer. It was a picture from a train platform. A girl standing under the sign Platform 7, Frankfurt, 2004. She was no older than 7. And beside her, a boy with a birthmark on his neck, the exact same one Ariv had. She turned to him. You seen this before? He shook his head. I thought I saw you once. At a station. I was just a kid. She swallowed hard. So was I. The silence wrapped around them like fog. It wasn't just about a war, or a house, or a photograph. It was about a pattern, a cycle. The same two souls, spinning through lifetimes, always finding, and always losing. Maybe this time was different. Or maybe this was just the middle of another loop. But now they both remembered. And memory is the most dangerous kind of truth. The diary was closed. But something had opened. Between them. Within them. That invisible thread, tight, trembling, alive, now pulled them toward questions they never dared ask out loud. They left the basement silently. The city felt colder now. Like the wind had overheard too much. Ariv walked a few steps ahead, his fingers tracing the edge of the bullet casing in his pocket, the one with her initials. He didn't tell her, but ever since they'd left the house, the scar on his right temple, it had begun to burn. Not ache. Burn. Like a fresh wound. But he had no memory of how he got it, not in this life. They reached a bridge. Old. Stone-carved. It overlooked the Vltava River, flowing quiet and endless, like time itself. Arya leaned over the railing. The water below shimmered like a mirror no one dared look into for too long. She spoke, without turning. If you didn't know me, not now, not in any life, would you still feel this pull? Arya stepped beside her. I don't know, he said softly. But something in me recognized something in you, before my mind had time to lie about it. She looked at him then. Really looked. And for a moment, it was all there. Flashes, her hand in his, running through fire. Her scream in the middle of a battlefield. His arms around her, bleeding, begging her not to fade. A kiss under sirens. Memories. Or echoes pretending to be real. She closed her eyes. There's a mark on your temple, she said. You ever wonder how it got there? He paused. Touched it. The skin was warm. Too warm. No. Doctor said I was born with it. Her breath caught. I remember giving it to you, she whispered. Or someone like me did. He stared. She continued slowly, as if hearing it from a voice inside her own bones. There was an explosion. You pulled me back. I dropped something. I turned. A brick wall collapsed. I pushed you. She reached out and gently touched the scar. This happened in another life. Neither of them spoke. The wind slowed. The river below moved like time folding in on itself. And then Arav asked a question that didn't sound like his own. What happens if we remember everything? Arya looked out at the water. Maybe we break the cycle. Or maybe, she added, we become the ones who caused it. A sudden gust of wind blew past them, fast, sharp. And in that wind, a voice. Faint, like breath caught between lifetimes. It said just one word. Run. They turned. No one. But something had shifted. Like the past wasn't just watching now. It was chasing. That night, Arya didn't sleep. She tried. She even lit a candle, opened her journal, played soft rain sounds on her phone. But nothing helped. Her body was tired, but her mind was somewhere else. More accurately, someone else. Because when she finally did drift off, it wasn't rest that came for her. It was a memory. In disguise. A dream, maybe. But too sharp to be fiction. Too real to be imagined. She was running. Snow all around. A narrow path through trees. A siren wailing in the distance. And beside her, him. Not Arav exactly, but someone who wore his face. Dirt smudged, blood at the corner of his mouth. Eyes wild with fear, but only for her. They stopped near an abandoned cabin. He held her by the shoulders. You can't come with me. You'll die. Her voice, younger and braver than she felt. If I don't come, I'll die anyway. He smiled then, sad and broken, like he'd lived through this moment more than once. Then maybe this is how it always ends. Gunshots. Clothes. He pulled a key from around his neck, pressed it into her hand. Find 84A. If not now, in the next life. Promise me. Then, a flash. A scream. Darkness. Arya woke up gasping. Her shirt was damp. The candle had melted down to the stub. The air felt thick, like someone had just been in the room. She stumbled out of bed and grabbed her phone. 2 missed calls. Both from Arav. The third rang while she was still staring at the screen. She picked up, breathless. You saw it, didn't you? His voice was rough. Like he hadn't slept either. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Because somehow, she knew. They had the same dream. Or maybe it wasn't a dream at all. Maybe it was a replay. A timeline bending in on itself. A soul's way of screaming through dimensions. She sat down, heart pounding. I think I died holding that key, she whispered. And I think you gave it to me so I could come back. Ariv was silent for a moment. Then he said something that shifted everything. What if we're not remembering? What if something is making us remember? She froze. Why would it do that? And his reply? Because something doesn't want us to finish what we started. Silence again. But this time, it felt crowded. Like someone else was listening in. She looked at the candle on the windowsill. The wax was still warm. But she hadn't lit it tonight. Morning never truly came. Not in the way it used to, soft, forgiving, full of promise. Now, light felt like an interrogation. And every shadow in the room seemed to whisper, remember. Arya stood in front of the mirror. Bare shoulders. Sleepless eyes. And a strange mark, right above her collarbone. She hadn't noticed it before. A faint, curved line, almost like a symbol. Not a scar, but not quite skin either. She ran her finger over it. It pulsed. And then, a flash. A candlelit room. A man tattooing her gently, whispering a prayer in a language she didn't speak, but somehow knew. Her voice in that memory was calm. If I forget again, bury the truth where my body can find it. She stumbled back, breath stolen. This wasn't just déjà vu anymore. It was awakening. Her phone buzzed. Ariv. She answered in a rush. I have something on my skin, she said. Like a mark. His reply came instantly. I do too. Pause. Same place. They met an hour later. In silence. Ariv rolled up his sleeve. On his forearm, faint ink. Faded from time, but unmistakable. A symbol. Then a number. 84A, below it a name. But it wasn't his. It was hers. She traced it with her eyes, not fingers. As if touching it might open something too deep to close again. What is this? She whispered. He shook his head. I don't know. But I think it was a message. From us. To us. She nodded slowly. They spent the rest of the day trying to find answers, archives, hospital records, ward logs. Everything pointed to one thing. House 84A was destroyed in 1944. In a fire. No survivors listed. But one strange detail stood out. 2 bodies were never identified. One male. One female. Both found holding hands in the basement. Arya looked at the file. Under distinguishing marks, the report noted, burnt into the female's collarbone, a curved rune resembling an infinity loop intersected by a single line. She looked at Ariv. Same mark. Same place. She sat back dizzy. What were we trying to say to ourselves? She asked. He stared at the old papers, thinking. Maybe, he said, we were trying to remind ourselves what we couldn't survive alone. A beat of silence passed between them. Then he added, or maybe we were warning each other not to make the same choice again. Arya's voice was low. Barely there. But what was the choice? And this time, no one answered. Not even the past. But the scar on her skin burned a little hotter. And that night, a new dream came. But it wasn't her dream. Not this time. That night, Arya dreamed again. Only this time. She wasn't in her body. She was watching. Floating. Like a silent ghost trapped in someone else's memory. The scene was a small orphanage. Old brick. Quiet halls. Winter outside the windows. Inside, a child sat alone at a wooden table, sketching. A girl. Maybe 6. Maybe 7. But her eyes, they were Arya's. Same shape. Same storm behind them. She drew obsessively, page after page. Each sketch nearly identical. 2 people standing on a bridge. Always the same. A man with a scar. A woman with a necklace that glowed like fire. The girl whispered something under her breath as she drew. Words in check. But Arya understood them. Not because she spoke the language, but because her soul remembered it. Find the fire. Remember the number. Don't trust the man with no shadow. Suddenly the child paused. She looked up. stared straight through the dream, straight at Arya, and smiled. Then everything shattered. Arya jolted awake. Sweat soaked her skin. Her fingers trembled. She didn't wait. Within 30 minutes, she was in Arya's apartment, holding the sketch she'd scribbled the moment she woke up. He stared at it, stunned. "That bridge," he whispered. "It's real." "What?" "I've seen it. I was stationed near it during training. In Austria. I think it's abandoned now, but I know that railing." She pointed at the two figures. "That's us. I saw this in a dream. A child version of me drew it, but she knew things. Things I'd never said aloud." He nodded slowly. "You think it's your past life?" She hesitated. "I think it's one of them. But this version of me, she didn't just live. She remembered." Arya went quiet, then reached into his drawer, pulled out a folded page, another drawing. The same two figures. Same bridge. Only this one had flames rising behind them. A building burning. And between them, a strange man with no face. He handed it to her without a word. "I've been drawing him since I was a kid," Arya said softly. "I never knew why. He's always standing between us." She looked closer. The faceless man had no eyes. No shadow. Just an outline. But something about him felt alive. "What if he's the reason we keep forgetting?" she whispered. Arya's jaw clenched. "What if he's not from any life?" he asked. "What if he's from the space between them?" The idea chilled her. A soul, stuck between reincarnations, feeding off their loop, keeping them from ever reaching the end. Arya suddenly remembered the child's voice from the dream. "Don't trust the man with no shadow." Her hands gripped the edge of the table. "We need to go to the bridge," she said. Arya nodded. But neither of them noticed the lights in the apartment flicker, once, then twice. And on Arya's mirror, for just a second. A shape. Watching. Smiling. Waiting. The train to Austria was quiet. Too quiet. Arya sat by the window, watching frost draw patterns across the glass. Arya sat opposite him, headphones in, but not listening to music. She was staring at the sketch again, the bridge, the flames, the faceless figure. "I keep thinking," she said finally, "what if this place isn't just where it ended, but where it always begins?" Arya didn't respond. He was holding something in his lap. A box. Small. Locked. No key. He'd found it buried in a chest back at his father's house. A chest no one had opened in decades. The label on the bottom? "Return to 84A if found." As the train rolled into a sleepy town surrounded by mountains, time seemed to warp. Everything felt slightly wrong. The trees too still. The air too cold. The silence too thick. They followed the winding roads on foot. Fog rolled in as the sun dipped. Arya felt like she was walking through her own dream. Then it appeared. The bridge. Old stone. Cracked and moss-covered. Just like in the sketches. And beneath it, the river. Frozen on the surface, but whispering underneath. They stepped onto the bridge slowly. Every sound seemed louder here. Every breath, every heartbeat, every memory. Arya stood at the center. "This is where I saw her," he said. "In training. There was a girl here one night. I thought I was hallucinating." Arya turned to him. "What did she do?" "She looked at me, then pointed into the water. Said one word." He swallowed. "Choose." Arya moved to the edge and looked down. Dark water. Ice cracking softly. And then, a flicker. In the reflection, not hers. Not his. But him. The faceless man. Standing behind them. She turned instantly. Nothing. Just air. But the cold now felt alive. Then, a low hum. Metal. Arya's box vibrated in his hands. He knelt down, placed it on the stone floor. It clicked. Unlocked. Inside, a folded letter, yellowed with age. And a necklace. The same one Arya wore in her sketches. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. The letter read, "To the next version of us, if you've made it here, it means we failed again. But it also means we remembered. You have one choice left. Burn the bridge or walk across it. But know this, one of us isn't who we think. One of us is borrowed." Arya froze. What does it mean? Borrowed? Arya stood still. Too still. She stepped back slightly. Arif? He looked at her, confused. Hurt. But was that his expression? Was it his emotion? She couldn't tell anymore. Suddenly, wind ripped across the bridge. The necklace flew from her hand, straight into the river. Arif lunged forward, too fast, too desperate. Arya's heart dropped. It wasn't the necklace he was trying to save. It was the connection. Because whatever was wearing his skin now, it needed that loop. That memory. That mistake. She ran. He didn't chase. He just stood at the edge of the bridge. Smiling. Shadowless. She ran. Not just from the bridge, but from the past. From the feeling that her heartbeat was no longer just hers. The town blurred behind her. The cold bit into her skin. But Arya didn't stop. Not until her legs gave out beneath a hollow tree in the woods. She collapsed to her knees and cried, not out of fear, but because the one thing she trusted, Arif, might not even be real. And worse, maybe he never was. Her phone buzzed. No number. Just one message. You left me again. She stared at the words. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. Back at the bridge, Arif, or whatever he was, stood still, watching the river flow. He didn't blink. He didn't move. But deep in his eyes, something ancient stirred. A memory flickered in him. Not of Arya, but of the first version of her. The one who burned with defiance, who jumped into fire before letting herself be controlled. That Arya had marked him once, branded his soul with her pain. And that scar never left. Not in this life. Not in the 100 before it. In the present, Arya's fingers traced the curve on her collarbone again. She whispered, "Who are you really?" Then something shifted. The air around her began to hum, not in sound, but in memory. Like a song trapped in her bones. Suddenly a flash. A room with red walls. Books. Candles. Mirrors. And a third person. A girl, neither her nor Arif, but familiar. Laughing. Screaming. Then whispering into Arya's ear. You fell in love with him. Before you knew, he wasn't yours. The dream vanished like smoke. Arya gasped, reaching into her coat pocket. The necklace, it wasn't gone. It had somehow returned. Still warm. Still glowing. But now, there was something new carved into it. A name. Elias. Not Arif. She didn't know that name. But her soul did. Her chest tightened. Was that who he really was? Or who he used to be? Was Arif just the face, while Elias was the echo? And if so, then who had she loved all along? Meanwhile, back in town, Arif stood in front of a cracked mirror at the train station. He stared at his own reflection. It didn't move. It just stared back, lips curled, eyes dark. And then it whispered without sound. She knows. He clenched his fists. Because borrowed souls never last long in borrowed bodies. Time was running out. And this version of the loop, it was different. Because this time, she remembered too early. Snow fell hard as Arya walked back to the bridge. Not because she forgave him, but because she had to know the truth. She held the necklace tightly now, not as a keepsake, but as a weapon. A memory etched in metal. Elias. Not a name she recognized, but one that had lived in her bones longer than her own. When she reached the bridge, it was empty. No Arif. No shadows. Just wind. But something was different. The stones under her feet were warm. Alive. She stepped to the center, closed her eyes, and whispered, If you're still in there, The real you, say something. Nothing. Only silence. And then, a voice behind her. I never left. You just stopped looking. She turned. It was Ara's face, but not his presence. The eyes weren't afraid anymore. They were ancient, tired. Say it, Arya demanded. Your name. He didn't hesitate. Elias. It hit her like a wave, past lifetimes crashing all at once. Flashes of fire, smoke, screams, their hands reaching for each other across burning wood. She saw herself, in another body, another time, holding a match. And Elias, standing at the edge, begging her not to light it. We swore, he said now, if it ever happened again, we'd end it ourselves. Before it got worse. You betrayed me, she whispered. No. I broke the loop. By hiding inside someone I loved? By becoming someone you trust long enough to remember what we really are. The bridge began to groan. The river below churned, even though it was frozen. What are we? She asked. He stepped closer. Not soulmates. Not lovers. We're fragments. Splinters from a mistake that was never allowed to die. You're lying. I wish I was. He held up his palm. A mark burned there, shaped like the same symbol on the necklace, a spiral made of flames. Arya's necklace pulsed in response. What do I do now? She asked, voice cracking. What we were always meant to do, Elias said. Burn it all. Suddenly, the sky rumbled. The bridge began to crack, stone breaking beneath their feet. If we destroy the bridge, we destroy the loop. No more rebirth. No more repeating the pain. But what happens to us? She asked. Elias smiled. We become stories. That's all we were ever supposed to be. Tears filled her eyes. She reached out, touched his face. I loved you, didn't I? Every time. And with that, she dropped the necklace. It hit the stone and exploded in white light. Flames shot through the bridge. Not hot, but cleansing, as if memory itself was burning. Elias faded first, his eyes never leaving hers. Then the bridge. Then everything. When Arya woke up, she was in her apartment. The necklace gone. No sketches. No messages. No Ariv. No Elias. Just silence. But for the first time in her life, it felt like peace. It had been 16 days. Since the fire. Since the bridge. Since Elias disappeared. But Arya hadn't spoken his name once. Not out loud. Not even in her mind. Because doing so felt like inviting a ghost back in. Still, every corner of her apartment held pieces of him. An old sweater that wasn't hers. A teacup with a crack only he noticed. A book they never finished reading. She'd wake up to silence so deep it felt alive. And yet, somehow, that silence whispered louder than any voice. She'd ask herself, what if we never burned it? Would we still be trapped? Would I still get to love him just one more time? She walked through her days like a shadow. Her art sat untouched. Her phone quiet. Her chest heavy. Then one night, a knock at the door. Not loud. Just steady. She opened it, half expecting to see nothing. But there it was. A package. No sender. No label. Inside, a photo. Old. Black and white. A woman and a man. Standing in front of a bridge. Her heart stopped. It was them. Not in this life. But it was them. Same eyes. Same pose. Same distance between their bodies, close but aching. And on the back, scribbled in faded ink. In every lifetime, we almost made it. Arya sat on the floor, staring at it for hours. Almost made it. Almost. Maybe that was what their story was meant to be, an echo of the kind of love that never got to finish its sentence. She remembered something Elias once said, back when he was just Ariv. When they were just normal. You ever feel like the world left a door open somewhere, and your soul just walked through it by mistake? Back then, she laughed. Now, she understood. The bridge was gone. The loop broken. The soul fragments set free. But the ache? Still there. Because even if love is timeless, timing never is. She tucked the photo into her journal, lit a single candle, and whispered just once, "Wherever you are, finish the story without me." The flame flickered, and in that small moment, she swore she felt someone exhale next to her. Not cold, not dark, just warm. And then, gone. Spring came early, but Arya didn't notice. Not until the scent of lilacs floated through her apartment window, and for once, she didn't flinch at the reminder of something soft. Her sketchbook lay open now, pages full of faces she didn't remember drawing. Some looked like Elias. Others didn't. But all of them shared the same eyes. Eyes that carried centuries. She sat at her desk, pen trembling in her fingers, and wrote him a letter, not to send, but to release. "Dear Elias, I think I've finally forgiven the part of you that wasn't ready. And maybe the part of me that always was. You said we were fragments, that we were never meant to last. But if love echoes through time the way pain does, then I hope you still hear this. We didn't get our ending, but we got something else, didn't we? A story, a spark, and the chance to start again. Goodbye for now." She folded the letter. No envelope, no address. Just placed it on the windowsill and left it there, like an offering to whatever was still listening. That night she dreamed, not of him, but of something after him. A train station. Midnight. A boy with one blue eye and one hazel. A girl humming a song only the wind could carry. They didn't know each other yet. But when their shoulders brushed, both turned and smiled. Not like strangers. Like survivors of something they didn't remember, but could still feel. When Arya woke up, she wasn't crying. She was calm. Still hollow in places, but growing things inside the emptiness now. Hope. Somewhere, in a place beyond names and bridges and broken loops, Elias opened his eyes too. Not in her world. Not even as Elias. But as someone new. And for the first time in all his lives, he wasn't looking for her, because now he trusted that if she was meant to return, she would find him. Epilogue. Years later, a girl named Mira found an old letter tucked into the foundation of her new art studio. It was yellowed with time, the ink barely legible. But one sentence was still clear. "In every lifetime, we almost made it." She stared at it, then looked at the man beside her, the stranger who felt like a memory. And just for a second, she remembered fire, a bridge, a promise, the end. Or maybe the beginning.